On December 31st, 2024, the Warren County Sheriff's Office received a call about a drive-by shooting at a New Year's Eve party. The initial dispatch log noted gunfire, a man down, and a suspect vehicle doing donuts in the street before fleeing the scene. Standard gang violence, they thought. An hour later, they had a suspect in custody, a 29-year-old dance instructor with no criminal record, found crashed in her mother's SUV, claiming she was the victim. And that is where the case file on Olivia Clendon stops making sense and starts reading like the transcript of a therapy session gone spectacularly wrong. Welcome to Audit the Case. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Audit the Case, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. The narrative begins with a love triangle that functioned less like a romance and more like a hostage negotiation. Olivia was married but separated, living with her in-laws while her husband lived with his parents. For 3 years, she maintained an extramarital affair with another man. For 3 years, she managed her alibis, her schedule, and her lies with the precision of a logistics coordinator, ensuring her husband and boyfriend never met. But control is a fragile currency. When the two men discovered each other, they didn't react with jealousy or violence. They reacted with curiosity. And then, friendship. In the days leading up to New Year's Eve, the husband and the boyfriend began talking. They compared notes. They realized they had been played by the same person, and instead of fighting over Olivia, they decided to ring in the new year together. Without her. Imagine the psychological geometry of that moment. Olivia wasn't just being excluded from a party, she was being erased from her own narrative. She had built her identity around being the center, the axis around which two men orbited, and now those two men were laughing about her over drinks while she sat alone at her mother-in-law's house. That wasn't abandonment. That was an existential threat to her self-image. She sent the messages. They sent back photos of themselves drinking together. Olivia felt bullied. She would later tell police. She felt harassed. The two men, she claimed, were picking at her. They were messing with her. And so she did what any reasonable person would do in that situation. She left the party, went to get a gun, and came back to shoot the house. Let's be clear about the evidence here. The official complaint states she fired 8 shots into a residence where at least a dozen people were celebrating. She struck a 29-year-old man in the abdomen, a man who had stepped outside to smoke, a man who had absolutely no involvement in her personal drama. He was just there. He was just on the porch. And while Olivia missed her husband and missed her lover, she found an innocent bystander with surgical precision. The bullet shattered his insides. He required emergency surgery. He was put on life support. He survived, but he will never be the same person. That is the hard evidence. That is the bedrock fact beneath every layer of self-pity and psychological contortion that followed. Now, here is where the narrative shifts from dysfunctional to pathological. When police arrived at the crash site, Olivia was disoriented. She was assessed for alcohol impairment. She had been drinking with family members earlier in the night, she admitted, maybe 3 shots of whiskey. The official toxicology report would later suggest the number was higher, but when she was taken to the interrogation room, she didn't confess. She didn't break down. She didn't plead for mercy. She lied. She denied owning a gun. She denied firing a gun. She denied being at the party. She said she was just driving around looking for her phone. The officers showed her the gun found at the crash site. She still denied it. And in that moment, the mask of the beloved dance instructor slipped. The community saw a woman who had been wronged by 2 men who bullied her. The police saw a novice criminal who had no idea how to navigate the consequences of her own actions. The official police reports highlight a critical turning point in the interrogation. The female officer on the scene, listening to Olivia's claims of bullying and harassment, did not offer comfort. She offered silence. Because how do you respond to someone who has just shot a man and is still framing herself as the victim? That moment is the visual anchor of this entire case. The officer's folded arms, the blank stare, the unspoken verdict that Olivia's reality had officially left the building. The threat to national security? No, this isn't international espionage. But there is a threat here, a domestic one, a psychological one. When someone's inner narrative becomes so detached from objective reality that they can pull a trigger and still believe they are the one who has been wronged, that is not a legal question. That is a thriller. And the ticking clock question is this: how long do you have to lose contact with reality before you become capable of anything? And who is responsible for pulling you back? Olivia's husband and boyfriend, the two men who had become friends, were questioned separately. They gave conflicting accounts of who was the aggressor in those text exchanges, but one detail stood out. They both confirmed that Olivia had tried to pit them against each other. They both confirmed that she had tried to lure them away from the party, separately to come to her. She was trying to regain control by dividing them, and when they refused to be divided, she escalated. That is the pattern. Exhibit A is the original relationship deception. Exhibit B is the mutual discovery and bonding of the two men. Exhibit C is the emotional escalation through text messages. Exhibit D is the decision to retrieve a firearm. Exhibit E is the drive-by shooting. And Exhibit F is the crash, the arrest, and the interrogation. The narrative flows like a slow-motion car crash, except the car crash was literal. Now, let's talk about what Olivia said. In her post-arrest jailhouse calls, recorded and entered into evidence, she continued to claim she was the victim. She told her mother that the charges were ruining her life. She told her mother that she was being persecuted. She never once, in any recorded call, expressed deep remorse for the man she shot. She asked if he was okay, but only after the police confronted her with the severity of his injuries. And even then, she framed it as a question about consequences for her. Is he going to be okay? Could have been empathy, it could have been concern for his well-being, but given the context of everything else, it felt more like a legal calculation. If he lives, I might not get murder. The control was the point. It was never about love. It was never about passion. It was about puppetry. Olivia wanted two puppets on her strings, and when the puppets started dancing together without her, she tried to break the stage. At trial, the prosecution presented the evidence methodically. The shell casings, the trajectory analysis, the text messages, the jailhouse calls, the victim's testimony, which was devastating. Daniel Johnson, the innocent man who was shot, described his life in the aftermath: chronic pain, emotional trauma, the inability to sleep without fear, the knowledge that he almost died because someone else was angry at someone else. That is the collateral damage of unchecked narcissism. That is the cost of a love triangle that was never about love. The jury found her guilty of attempted murder, 2 counts of felonious assault, and illegal discharge of a firearm. The judge, David Fornell, issued a statement that cut through the noise. He noted that Olivia may have started 2025 as a free person, but she would spend the next decade and a half incarcerated. She was sentenced to 16 to 20.5 years, and at sentencing, Olivia had one final chance to speak. She said she cared about her family. She said she was glad the victim was well. She said she hoped he had a great future. She did not say she was sorry. She did not say she had made a terrible mistake. She did not say she regretted the violence. She offered a Hallmark card when a full confession was required. The control was the point. And now, let me stop here and introduce the moral refrain. Control was the point. The shooting wasn't about revenge. It was about reasserting dominance. Control was the point. It wasn't about the men. It was about the narrative. Control was the point. And when she lost it, she tried to kill it. The victim's relative addressed the court with words that cut deeper than Olivia's bullets. She said, "Because of one person's rage, nothing is the same, and I don't think it ever will be." That is the truth. Olivia's rage was not spontaneous. It was calculated. She didn't fire a warning shot. She fired 8 rounds into a house. She did donuts in the street to align her window with the front door. That is premeditation. That is attempted murder with a side of theater. And yet, on social media, friends of Olivia came to her defense. They said the headlines don't tell the whole story. They said she was a good person who made a bad choice. They said people should be kinder to her. But that raises a question. What is the whole story? Is the whole story about her hurt feelings? Or is it about the man who is still recovering from emergency surgery years later because he stepped outside at the wrong moment? The court documents are clear. The victim's testimony is clear. The text messages are clear. But Olivia's friends are asking for compassion for the shooter. And the unanswered question remains, why? Why does she get to be the victim? Why does her pain matter more than the man she shot? And if you were the one on that porch, would you agree? The case of Olivia Clendon is not about a love triangle. It is about a control freak who lost her grip. It is about a woman who could not stand to see two men she manipulated bond over the truth. It is about a narcissist who, when confronted with the consequences of her own actions, doubled down on the lie. The evidence is in the court filings. The evidence is in the body cam footage. The evidence is in the jailhouse calls. And the evidence is in the sentencing transcript, where Olivia said everything except, "I'm sorry." For a deeper look at the psychological profile of this case, we encourage you to read the full sentencing transcript. You can find it through the Warren County Court of Common Pleas Public Records. It is a chilling document that reveals exactly how Olivia viewed herself in her own mind. And we have one question for you to answer in the comments. If you were the judge, would the sentence have been longer or shorter based on her lack of remorse? Let us know what you think. If you found this analysis compelling, like and share this video so more people can see the facts behind the headlines. Subscribe to Audit the Case and turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive into the documents that matter. We don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence.